So my name is Sarita Smith. I am here to present the launching of our new student assignment plan. So what is student assignments? So currently we as a school district assign our families based on where they live. So we have all these markers and maps. Based on your address, you get assigned to a school. And this leaves families with limited school options and limited school choice. The only other options to go to a different school other than the one that you are assigned to is through our lottery process for both magnet schools and magnet programs. So we are hoping to shift what student assignments means through a pretty long-term project. So student assignments to us moving forward really means to build a system that aligns with our values and our community and brings equitable lens and opportunity for all the students in District 65. So this year, or actually 2020, I was hired to lead this work. And I put in its totality because it isn't just about a Fifth Ward school. It isn't just about redoing lines. We are truly looking at all the processes, all the procedures, and what this could look like in a modernized structure and way, and definitely fixing and addressing historical inequities that continue to impact our students of color and our most marginalized families. So what is the vision of this? Like, what is the end goal? So our end goal is really to create a comprehensive student assignment plan, which will include, but is not limited to, new school boundaries and, in essence, decreasing transportation costs, an equitable selection process for magnet schools and programs, and a school for Fifth Ward families. So I think it's really, really important to understand where we came from in order to determine where we are going. So a little bit of a history lesson. We should all know that, 1954 was an important year with Brown versus Board of Education, outlawing segregation of public education facilities for Black students. And then obviously right after that, Civil Rights Act, which has suspended all of our state and local laws requiring segregation. And so what was happening in Evanston during this time? In the 63, District 65 created a voluntary transfer policy implemented to relieve overcrowding at both Foster and Dewey School. And this is where our infamous busing begins. In 64, once the Civil Rights Act passed, the board put desegregation as a policy, and that is when a lot of our shifts in our schools and our borderlines started. So in 66 and 67 school year, one of those efforts was Foster School becoming a laboratory school, and this school was actually fully integrated. An important note here is that we actually bused white and Asian students to the Fifth Ward simultaneously while Black students were being bused out. So very interesting dynamic going on there in 66, 67. And then we also opened Kingsley School again for overcrowding reasons. So we were able to find some pretty cool maps, if my screen will work for me, on what our district looked like pre-segregation and then post. So this map shows schools that some of you may not be familiar with. We have some schools in here that were closed throughout our history. Miller and Central, College Hill, Timber Ridge used to be a local area school, and Noise. So these are some schools we'll kind of talk about over the course of this presentation. Post-segregation, we all know that Foster School ended up closing, and they were, the community was shifted into like 6 or 7 different schools. And I think an important note here is, as we continue to think about and talk about the Fifth Ward and schools, that even though there were schools that were pretty close to proximity to the Fifth Ward, a lot of these students were kind of driven and bused to schools way far south, way far east and west of their home area. So then in the 70s, due to desegregation efforts, our enrollment dropped significantly in District 65. At some point, we had like 10,000 students and it dropped by a couple thousand over the course of a pretty short amount of time. So obviously the district looked at boundary lines and decided that we needed to close some schools. So College Hill, Miller, and Noyes ended up closing. King Lab and Skiles, which was another middle school, ended up combining. And by 79 ended up moving to the current location where King Arts is. And the decision to close Foster School was made in 1979 as well. During that time, they also decided to close 3 other schools. They were looking at Timber Ridge, Central, and Kingsley. Timber Ridge ended up closing as a local area school and turned into a magnet. Central closed, and Kingsley was one that the board had some pretty deep discussion on when they were looking at that, because the communities around there, including Fifth Ward families, were arguing that then there is really no school even within proximity of their neighborhood. So there was a lot of questioning about that, a lot of debate. Kingsley ended up surviving, and Foster School, as we noted, did close. In the 80s, there was just a lot of push and transparency from our board about creating this established 60% guidelines, which is that no defined racial group should exceed 60% of a school population. And again, a lot of busing and a lot of movement of Fifth Ward families and Black and Brown communities to make that actuality. So in the 70s, the early 70s, this is kind of what the map looked like. Timber Ridge again ended up closing and becoming a magnet school. So Walker consumed that space in that area of Evanston. Central ended up closing. So Oakton and Washington consumed a lot of that space. So you'll see over time as the map shifts that every time a school closes, obviously another school kind of takes up that space and those families. In the 90s, it was get back to the drawing board again for the district. And a lot of everything after the 70s was really about overcrowding and racial balance. You'll kind of see that as a pattern in a lot of these maps. And so there was a lot of small shifts to balance schools and balance race in schools. And in the 2000s, we really shifted to a program mindset to diversify schools. So obviously in 2001, the district opened TWE, our Two-Way Immersion program, at 2 schools. And since then, we've actually expanded that to 5. And then in 2006 and 2007, we offered African-centered curriculum, also known as ACC, at Oakton. So the board in the 90s were pretty literal about their drawings. We found some pretty interesting drawings where they're literally scratching things out like, hey, if we shift this line this way, what it will look like. So that was revision 1 in 94, 95. We ended up getting something closer to revision 2 in 94, 95, which is actually pretty close to the current boundary lines that we have today. This map is specifically speaking towards the middle school population. I think it's worthy to note that even though through much of the 60s and 70s, we were shifting boundary lines for our K-5 population, the middle school map didn't shift that much. So again, talking about overcrowding and making sure that our schools were racially balanced, a lot of that same consideration really didn't happen at the middle school level. And I hear a lot in the community and from our principals, about like how many kids are coming and what's the true capacity of their schools. And it's just worthy to note that, some of that is ramifications of us not really giving the same attention to middle school lines as much as we did elementary. So here we are today. Current maps, again, not very drastically different from that mid-90s map you saw, which also wasn't drastically different from the 70s map outside of some schools closing. And we have the infamous Willard Island, which we'll address in another map. So here we are, a lot of talk about the Fifth Ward, a lot of talk about, Foster School closing. And I just wanted to take a minute for you guys to visualize kind of where we are. So I'd also like to mention that there was a correction made in the board pre-read regarding wards and school inequities. There was a map used that had an error on it. And in that map, we stated that all the districts had a school except the Fifth Ward, which is not accurate. So all of our schools have wards have a school besides First and Fifth. So First Ward is here. There's no actual physical school building in First or obviously in Fifth. And so as you can see, the colors are the schools and who they serve. So in your first ward, many of those families and students attend Dewey. A small portion of them attend Orrington. Then you have your fifth ward where families are technically assigned to 5 different schools. The challenging part for the fifth ward families is that they actually attend every school in our district. So we have fifth ward families going all the way to Oakton and Dawes, up to Willard and to Walker and Skokie. I mean, they're literally accounted at every single school in our district. And some of that is due to, our special education services, being only at limited schools. Some is due to placement of programs like TWE and ACC. And some, frankly, are due to families who just have felt so much adversity in some of the schools that they are assigned to that they bluntly just refuse to attend. And then we've had to make considerations for them to feel safe and wanted in our district. So again, still currently our middle schools, again, hasn't shifted that much. So why now? Why are we doing this now? So obviously, one reason is our policy. We are actually supposed to look at these lines annually and make recommendations to the board, every year. So I am a very policy-driven person. So it was one of the first things I looked at when I got into this role. The inequities are jarring. They are not new. A lot of this information people know already. And to Dr. Horton's point, we are not just going to talk about inequities and how to build an equitable education system. We're going to do something about it. So we understand that this is a long-term project, but we really have to get around and rectify this perception of good and bad schools in the district, which we hear in my office a lot. We have to address our fifth ward students and the fact that they attend every school in the district. Like, what does that say about our priorities and how we prioritize them? And, we have the 2 wards that are the wealthiest in our district and have the most resources, have the most schools. So there's something that doesn't sit right about that, and we need to address that. We are also going to be doing a master facility plan, and what better time to talk about school location options and assignments than coupled with a master's facility plan, which I am super excited about, especially the fact that they're going to analyze capacity and school utilization, so we could really determine if we have to shift anything, how that relates to what schools can actually handle. And then our population, which was brought up earlier, we are decreasing in size in the district. We totally understand that this number here is an anomaly because of COVID, but even our projections as early as 18, 19, and last year were still showing us on a decline over the next 5 years. We also have some census data that is stating that our population in Evanston is decreasing, and we'll be looking at the new census data that is coming out. And there's even some national data over the next 30 years that's showing that the baby making population is also not doing that as much anymore. So we want to be prepared and again, fiscally responsible, but how we navigate this process. So over the past few months, it's really just been about planning, like how do we do this? How do we get a team of people that is going to support this work in our community? And so here's all the staff at District 65 that I've probably met with way too much, and I've probably bothered way too often, but thanking them for their support and helping us visualize this in a strategic and sensible way. And how do we do this? So student assignment, Phase 1 is really it was about reviewing our systems, which I've been doing since I got here, and our policies and procedures related to student assignment and any information that's currently out there from the community. I've met with several community leaders, particularly people that have tried this before and the group that got it on the ballot a few years ago. So just trying to understand the landscape. Obviously, we need to establish some deadlines and establish our internal working team. And then the student advisory assignment advisory committee application is being developed, and we've created a selection metrics for that. So we are going to be asking for our community members to join us in this. This is not just an internal district decision. This is not just an internal district process. We are going to be collecting people in our community to help us understand and realize this. So Phase 2 We'll be doing some goal setting. We'll be doing our application, our SAC selections. There will be more surveys. We know we'll try to condense these for you guys, but some community and parent and staff surveys on this, because we know opinions will be large and vast, and we want all that information so we can synthesize it. We will be engaging with our superintendent's youth advisory team, because I'm coming from the nonprofit world, and youth voice and choice is really important. And so often we adult and don't ask the kids what they want. So it's really important for us to get their voices heard. We will be doing ward specific town halls, because we believe that we really need the input of our community. So based on the survey, we may have some questions that we need to go further and deeper about, and we will then take those questions and bring them to the town hall. So we have a very clear understanding and specificity about what families need and want in a school and community space. And then, probably way too much data analytics for me to get into. Phase 3, hopefully around the fall or even early winter, the master facilities plan will help inform our recommendations and get some information from them. We'll be doing a little bit of a different thing with community feedback forms. So yes, we're doing a survey. Yes, we're doing town halls, but we'll have a landing page on our district website that will be a place where you can ask continuous questions and continuously converse with us, us being the working team. So we don't want it to be kind of one and done, like we ask you your opinion and we never hear back from you. We really want this to be an ongoing process and ongoing communication, and to be fully transparent about what we can and can't do. So some phenomenal things may come out of these town halls and surveys, and we may come back and say, like, that sounds amazing, we can't do that right now, or that sounds amazing, here's portions of it that we're going to continue to work towards. So again, just don't want anything to be a surprise by the time we present board recommendations. So a little bit about our call to action and what we're going to be asking for of our SAC committee. So I am going to read this. Our call to action is that all students should have the right to a local area school, high quality education, high quality programs, and high quality teachers that are proximate to their homes and neighborhoods. We must ensure that all families have the opportunity to actively participate in their students' education without barriers. This should be our commitment to all students in District 65. So if that spoke to you in any kind of way, I am pleading and begging and asking you to apply for our committee. So the Student Assignment Advisory Committee application will be going live soon. We are looking for 30 people who are passionate about school equity and believe that all students have a right to equitable and quality education experience. So 10 of these people will be District 65 educators and administrators. We need 10 representatives from the community across all genres and areas, community youth agencies, leaders, community institutions, alderperson. I'd love to have the input of families and or staff from Family Focus and youth serving agencies, religious-based organizations, our local colleges and university. And I really, really appreciate a few representatives from the Citizens for a Better Evanston who got the Fifth Ward School on the ballot last go around. And then of course, our District 65 parents, again, as 10 people, so as wide of a school variety as possible. So this application, we plan for it to go live February 15th. I know it's right around the time where schools are opening too, so we're throwing a lot at you guys. We will hopefully send this out in a vast communication wave. So anyone who is willing and wanting to get on here, apply, could do that. And we hope to do all of our selections before spring break, and then our work will begin. And I am also asking 2 board members to be a part of this committee. And the staff surveys and community surveys are on the horizon. So I'll end with this beautiful picture of a Sankofa bird, which, as you can see on the title, says, "Go back and get it." I think there is a remarkable opportunity for us to right our wrongs and fix the inequities that we've had around education and student assignments in the district before we can then go forward and talk about other parts of this process. So we are really this bird is a symbolization from Ghana that translates to go back and get it. It characterizes the need to reflect on our past in order to build a successful future. This work is going to be significant. It's going to be emotional. It's going to be challenging, but every parent wants the best for their child. And we can no longer prioritize some parents and some families and some students over others. As we really push to build an equitable system, we have to modernize this system. There are some really cool examples out there that we've been looking at that I've heard about since starting this work and talking internally that I think would really lend to our vision. And we have to fix the inequitable structures that we have put in place, particularly for our fifth ward residents. So I hope this body of work creates choice for parents and truly is reflective of our Evanston population. And I will take your questions now.
Thank you, Sarita, for the great work. I want to say that there's been quite a bit of work done to get to this point. So thank you.
Thank you.